Hello everyone, this is Kat and welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfics. This will be the continuation of the Mystery of Midoriya Izuku. This will be Part 8, Chapter 8, entitled Night 4. Shouta emails the encrypted files of the recordings of the conversations with the principals and the workers to Nezu before heading home with a terse suggestion of burning Aldera to the ground. He feels like he's aged about 10 years in the span of an afternoon as he walks back home. Shouta's head spins. Midoriya was suicide-baited and bullied horrifically. Midoriya, who is kind and empathetic, probably had the best reason out of any student he knew to turn villain. And he would be a terrifying fucking villain if he went down that path. Midoriya wants to be a hero, though. Midoriya spent most of his life assumed quirkless. Midoriya calls Bakugo Kachan, and everyone thinks that they are childhood friends. They're not childhood friends. They hadn't been for years, from what Shouta's pieced together, but Midoriya still lets people think they are. Midoriya looks so shocked. When a teacher offers kindness and praise, Midoriya knew All Might before UA. Midoriya has a quirk that came out of nowhere with a convenient explanation for it. A picture has formed for Shouta of Midoriya's life before UA in terms of school at least, and it's frankly horrifying to really think about it. It also was, in many ways, worse than Shouta's own shitty school experience before he came to UA. Really, the fact that Midoriya could be something resembling adjusted was frankly a miracle. Shouta sighs as he trudges through the door. I'm home. Hey! Izashi greets cheerfully from the kitchen. There's my favorite listener. Shouta stands in the doorway, feels all the anger and tension sort of leave his shoulders with the tenderness in Izashi's voice. He toes off his boots, shoves his feet into his house slippers, and makes a beeline for Izashi. Shouta usually shows his love and affection in actions over words. Sometimes, however, you have a shitty day and you just need to hug your husband. He hugs Izashi from behind and buries his face into the crook of his neck. Logically, it's not the safest place in the world. Emotionally, however, Shouta never feels more secure than when he can do this, knowing Izashi will protect him if he wants to hide away for a while. His husband turns around to face Shouta and wraps his arms around his waist. I take it going to the listener school didn't go so hot. Izashi murmurs after several minutes of standing there. He presses his lips to Shouta's hair and the tension drains more from him. People suck, and should be psychologically screened before becoming teachers. He complains about Iyagi's competency in teaching, but at least the man genuinely cares about his students and their success. Aldera actively sabotaged his student and made him feel like he was less than nothing. This puts Midoriya's willingness to break himself in pursuit of his goals a more horrifying perspective. If only you can dictate how things were done in the educational system. It's a daily disappointment that I can't do that. Shouta pulls back, scrubbing a hand over his face. Fuck, Hizashi. It's a miracle Midoriya trusts any adult at all. I threw those schools to Nezu and would maybe like to personally punch each of Midoriya's teachers in the stomach if I could get away with it. Think that's assault, babe, he says, eyes gentle. But I know the feeling. Anyway, it's been a while since Nezu got to rake subpar institutions over the coals. You may get a bonus. Shouta snorts. There's really nothing funny about the situation, but he's long learned that if you don't find something to hold on to, then the darkness of the world will somehow swallow you whole. Sometimes you just need to find a way to light the way with humor. Not that he would tell Miss Joke that. Shouta will go to the grave saying otherwise within her earshot. He has a reputation to maintain amongst his fellow heroes as well. It's not even that much of a joke, either. Snipe had brought Nezu the last terrible school for him to raze to the ground, and he got extra vacation time so he could see his family in America. Hizashi ushers Shouta to the table where dinner's laid out. He takes a moment to breathe it in. Besides, you're making headway with the little listener, right? He seems to trust me, at least, or realizes I'm not like his other teachers, but I've been working on him for the past couple days. Don't forget what you did for those kids at the USJ either, Hizashi says as he pushes a bowl of rice to Shouta. They all know what you would do for them. His elbow twinges at the reminder, but his husband does have a point. I have enough to make sure that he and Bakugo can't be paired together for the exam. He taps his chopsticks to the rim of his rice bowl in frustration. There's something that I'm missing, though, and it's bothering me. You never did like a puzzle unsolved. I remember when you and Oboro would get into fights over if the ending of a mystery would make sense or not. A sort of bittersweet, nostalgic fondness twists in his chest at the mention of Oboro, but like many mentions of their friend, the ache doesn't hurt as much as it once did. Instead, Shouta allows a half-smile to flicker on his face as he remembers the old argument. He liked the conclusion of a mystery to make logical sense, while Oboro would argue about a character and drama and how it was the journey that mattered, rather than the end result. That probably said something about both of their personalities now that Shouta reflects on it. "You have your night show tonight, right?" Shouta asks his husband, wanting to put focus on something else for a while. "Who's your guest?" He grins at that, easily rolling with the subject change. "Mirko? Oh man, it's gonna be a wild one." Hisashi falls into chatter about interview prep and his thoughts on the up-and-coming young hero as Shouta relaxes, thankful for his husband's ability to fill the silence so he doesn't drown in his own thought. LaRue Morgana, better known in the world of underground heroics as Madame LaRue, is a figure as unchanging and unending as time itself, or so it feels like anyway. While underground heroes could go to the bigger support companies for the products that they need, the priority tends to go to the limelight heroes, so rather there are smaller-scale operations to fulfill the needs of pro heroes that stick to the shadows. Madame LaRue is arguably the best of these smaller-scale operations. She's picky with her clientele, saying she only looks for the correct aura or something like that. Not that Shouta believes a lick of it, as her quirk has to do with longevity. If you can believe Madame LaRue, then she's been around since when quirks were just emerging, hiding in plain sight and enjoying watching the years pass her by. Shouta is, for some reason, one of those lucky clients that she chooses to take on. Why, he doesn't know, but he's always had a habit of drawing in the odd ones. He did need to get some more smoke bombs, and Madame LaRue said she can talk to him about Midoriya's shoes, so he leaves the apartment immediately after dinner to see her before he starts patrol. The tiny shop front advertises Madame LaRue's psychic services in bright neon letters. She offers palmistry, crystal ball readings, aura readings, and her specialty, tarot. Shouta stares at the flickering neon eye in the window, wondering why he always finds the weird ones before heading inside. The shop is half-lit and smells strongly of incense and herbs. Jars line the faux dusty shelves, advertising things like Eye of Newt and Tears of a Freshly Broken Heart. A hazy glow emanates from lamps covered in scars. This is the front for where the best in underground heroics in Japan, and possibly the world over, get their support work done. "Welcome, visitor." Madame LaRue's husky voice purrs out in the shop. "I hope you're ready to peer across the veil. Oh, a Eraserhead." Just like that, the overhead lights flick on, bathing the entire shop in bright fluorescent glow. Madame LaRue steps up from the back with a wide smile on her plump face. She barely comes up to Shota's mid-chest, with thick glasses magnifying her eyes. Her dark hair is streaked with gray, frizzing a bit, though her face puts her anywhere between 30 and 50, and in some lights she looks as young as 20. "The maiden, mother, and crone, all rolled into one, sugar," she said with a grin and a wink when they first met. She hasn't changed since. "Madame," Shouta greets, but allows the hug that she gives her. He bends down, letting her long, brightly painted nails squish his cheeks as she looks him over. The hand pulls back and she grins at him. "Always a man of few words, aren't you, baby cakes? Well, no worries, I got those smoke bombs that you requested, and we can talk about that photo you sent me." Shouta follows LaRue into the back, where she pops open a bison skull on the wall and types in the code. A staircase rises from the wooden floor. "So how is that fine husband of yours, Eraserhead?" she asks as she sachets down the steps. "Mike's fine. He says hello." "Ah, tell him he's still a honey voice charmer." She laughs deep and full. "I listen to his show when I get the chance." Shouta will not be telling Hisashi that. He loves his husband and respects Madame LaRue, but he tries to make sure that the two of them are only in the same room at least twice a year, with enough time for Shouta to prepare the onslaught of extroversion and personality that comes out with them together. It's just a lot when it happens, even more if Nomuri is somehow involved as well. Madame LaRue's support workshop, in contrast to her psychic shop, is all shiny and clean, well-maintained and organized. There's a meticulousness about the whole affair that shows all of her dramatics and personality. Madame LaRue is the best in the business. "Now then," she begins once she gives the smoke bombs that he asked for. "I was mighty surprised when you sent me that photo of your student, Eraserhead, because that boy, from what I could see of the sports festival, he has a pretty powerful quirk." Shouta immediately knows that he's not going to like where this conversation is headed, based on the sharp look in Madame LaRue's eyes. "He does," Shouta agrees. She hums thoughtfully as she peers over her glasses at him. "Right. Tell me, what do you know of quirklessness?" "Probably not as much as I should have," he states, easily letting her take the lead on the conversation as he tries to ignore the churning in his gut. "I know that there's some physical differences between a quirked person and a quirkless one. I know that they experience a lot of discrimination. Also that the hate crimes and suicides in the quirkless demographic, especially amongst the younger generations, is very high. Some of those physical differences are usually internal outside of the lack of a quirk, Madame Leroux states, warming up to the lesson. Wisdom teeth, which are an extra set of molars that usually are removed in the teenage years, an appendix, a vestigial organ that can become infected and rupture, which releases a poisonous substance to the body, and an extra toe joint in the pinky toe. Usually confirmation of the extra joint in the pinky toe is the way to go for a quirkless diagnosis. The slight twist in her mouth is enough to tell him what she thinks of the term. Like being quirkless is some sort of disease, the recovery is quick enough, though, as she takes out the picture of Midoriya's shoes. This leads to a special footwear for the quirkless population, as their foot is both a bit wider and different shape than people with quirks, even those with wide feet. Madame Leroux's long, bright blue nails tap on the photograph. Shoes like this, for example, quirkless people are the only ones who buy them. They're the only ones that they're made for. Shouta stares at her, desperately trying to feel his world hadn't been turned upside down yet again for the week. He hears water rushing in his ears, but there's no water. It's his heart roaring and the blood from his body rushing. What are the chances of a quirk emerging anyway, with the joint? He asks, keeping his voice steady. He's not sure if he's doing a good job, though. 1 in a several billion shot, and even if it does happen, it's usually pretty weak, Madame Leroux answers. I've only seen it once, years and years ago. Nothing as strong as what your student shows. Fuck. Shit. Motherfucking goddamn. Problem Child wasn't assumed to be quirkless. He was quirkless, but now he's got a quirk. How the fuck does he have a quirk? There's a story passed around between underground heroes, those in the shadows. It's told in whispers, in backroom bars and on long stakeouts. It's about a villain that's been around since quirks emerged, who can take your quirk for his own with just a touch, but some of the heroes say he can give them as well. With the League of Villains gaining more traction, Shouta finds himself thinking of the story more and more. He thinks of Midoriya with a quirk that breaks his body, a quirk that he shouldn't have, and wonders for a split second. He wonders if he could be a villain in heroic clothing. But almost immediately he thinks of Midoriya's character. He's kind, compassionate, full of empathy, who stares down Shouta on that first day with a broken finger and fire in his eyes. The kid who faces down the Nomu, who sees Shouta in trouble and jumps into the fray in that stupid, reckless, self-sacrificingly heroic way of his. No, he doesn't know how Midoriya got that quirk, but it wasn't from a boogeyman passed around in the world of the underground. He knows his student well enough to know that. Eraserhead. Shouta snaps back to himself as Madame Leroux looks at him, eyebrows raised. You all right, sugar? Please keep this quiet. You don't need to tell me twice, she promises. I just hope that you figure out a way to explain it away if someone puts 2 and 2 together and comes after that kid. He has a good excuse in his file and All Might backing him up, Shouta says tiredly. He rubs his hand across his face again, wishing that he could just face plant in his bed and sleep the rest of the day away. Plus, he has me. He didn't spend years perfecting his poker face for nothing. Only Hisashi Nomuri can tell what he's thinking most of the time, and he's perfected the dead-eyed stare and flat effect for a damn good reason. Midoriya was quirkless. He has a quirk. He wants to be a hero, so Shouta will help him be a hero. He says goodbye to Madame Leroux and takes his leave, his thoughts swirling around in his head like a storm cloud. Here's what Aizawa Shouta considers when he leaves Madame Leroux's. Quirk theory. Well, not the whole of a quirk theory, but a particular theory called the oppositional generational theory. Basically, it says that a generation of quirks, there will be some that are similar yet fundamentally different. For example, there's a hero in the UK around Shota's age called Level Up, who can increase the power of a person's quirk by looking at them. It's pretty much the opposite of erasure. In UA alone, there's Kirishima and Tetsu who have the fundamental quirk of hardening in their skin, except one is stone and the other is metal. Maybe not entirely opposite, but different enough for the theory to hold. He considers the legend of the boogeyman in the shadows, who can take quirks and give them back. No way Midoriya would go to him. Kid would rather be quirkless than be in debt to a shadowy, terrifying figure. But what if there was a quirk that could be passed on, slip through generation after generation? There's another story in the underground community as well about a succession of underground heroes, Soar, Lariat, Requiem, and others dating back to the Vigilante days. Before Rhode Island New State Statute happened, these heroes' quirks is oddly mutated, giving them increased strength, speed, stamina. Oddly enough, the underground hero who developed it next was the protege of the one who had the mutation. Odd, now that Shota's really thinking about the legend. Oppositional generational theory. If one quirk can give or take the others, then why can't one quirk from the same generation, or close to it, be passed on? Though how can it grow stronger with each generation? Shouta thinks of Midoriya, and his sneakers, and those wild, desperate eyes as he reaches out to save Uraraka, protect Shouta, to talk to Todoroki, to be a hero. And he wonders just what he's fallen into. Shouta will admit that he probably shouldn't have gone on patrol after talking with Madame Leroux. He probably should have just called it a night and went home. He was independent for a reason, and that reason was he set his own hours, well, amongst other things, but setting his own hours was admittedly a big draw. Leaving Madame Leroux's, though, Shouta also felt too keyed up to go home and sit with Bastard, pacing through the apartment like a caged jungle cat and updating already set lesson plans. He is a maelstrom of emotions from everything today. Patrolling sounds good, so Shouta goes on patrol, even though he shouldn't, and he gets a pretty nice gash on his side and his temple. He waves off concern from the officers on scene after they arrest the guy. Without thinking, he heads to the rooftop of Midoriya's apartment building. Maybe out of some need to see the problem child with this new information, maybe he wants to see if this is all really an act, and the kid made some sort of desperate deal with a shadowy figure for a quirk. Maybe he just wants to see the kid and make certain that he's all right with his own two eyes with this new information, because there's being assumed quirkless and being quirkless, and fuck, this pretty much changes everything and nothing at the same time, doesn't it? Aizawa-sensei! The kid yelps in concern, forgoing his usual hero name, as they did on these nighttime chats. He's holding mugs of hot chocolate tight. You're bleeding! Seriously, there's no way he got a quirk from the Terror of the Underground. Shouta would eat his capture weapon. It's largely stopped now, Shouta reassures. Maybe he should have gotten it checked out, though. Midori raises an eyebrow and rolls his eyes. It's such a teenage gesture for him. It's also probably the most disrespectful thing that he's ever done in Shota's presence as well. It feels like a win. Come on, we have a first aid kit in the apartment. And wouldn't your mother worry about you bringing a strange man into her apartment? Mom's staying with a coworker for a couple of nights. Her law firm has a pretty big case coming on, and it's all hands on deck, even the paralegals. Problem child answers with a shrug. So it's just me. Now come on, Sensei, let's get you cleaned up. He says it with a light in his eyes, one that says that he plans on bringing up the next time Shouta hounds the kid about taking care of himself better. Which, you know, is probably fair. Shota's always been more of a do-as-I-say, not-as-I-do sort of teacher in quite a few regards. Either way, curiosity pushes his feet into the doorway of the apartment's rooftop. The door to the Midoriya's apartment is rather innocuous, but so is the rest of the building, so Shouta isn't that surprised. The kid gives him the mug of hot chocolate so that he can open the door with his keys. Shouta clocks the All Might and Present Mike keychains on it. Welcome to my home, Sensei. Do you need help with your boots? Shouta pulls down his goggles when they get inside, wincing at the dried blood on them. Nah. He hands the mug back to Midoriya, who exchanges his shoes for his slippers with practiced familiarity. He sets the guest slippers out for him, and he heads inside, calling that he'll go get their first aid kit. Shouta gingerly takes off his boots and puts the slippers on. The Midoriya's apartment is quite nice, clean, well-kept, and pretty big. Shouta walks past the problem child's bedroom and keeps his expression carefully blank at the large amount of hero merch on the walls, particularly All Might, but he also clocks some decent amount of other heroes, as well as both domestic and foreign. Is that a replica of his goggles? He also notes a stack of weights in the corner and a locked shelf on the desk. Interesting. Shouta continues on, not wanting the kid to come looking for him and see him staring at his bedroom. He walks past the living area where he sees the news playing softly. There are pictures of Midoriya and a woman with long green hair, and has to be a mother. In the baby pictures, there's a man with freckles and dark curls who has to be the father in hero merchandising. There's a slightly more recent one, Midoriya and the man with some gray in those curls striking a pose in front of an American monument of some sort. Problem Child meets him in the dining area, carrying one of the largest first aid kits that Shota's ever seen a civilian own before. Adding with what Shota's already learned, the alarm bells of Midoriya's past just seem to ring and ring and ring in his ears. Both cups of hot chocolate are resting on the table as he sets down the kit with a heavy thunk. Right, Aizawa-sensei, I don't know how I can say this politely, Midoriya says with bright red tinge to his cheeks, but I'm going to need you to lift up your, shirt. I can do it myself, kid, he offers instead. That's a really awkward place on your side, though, Midoriya insists firmly with bright, determined eyes. I've been hurt there before, and it took me like an hour to... He stops as if suddenly remembering his audience. Midoriya bites his lip. Shouta remembers that second night when they talked about bullies. I get it, kid. Remember? A bit of the tension releases from those shoulders as he fiddles with the kit, digging around for what he needs. I didn't want my mom to find out that it was getting bad, he confesses, not meeting Shota's eyes. My dad makes good money, so does Mom, but it doesn't mean that money's endless, you know? And private schools are really expensive. They couldn't afford to send me to another school, and it's hard to get into private schools anyway when people think you're quirkless. It hangs there, a casual admission of how quirks or the lack of one can determine your worth, never mind your character or your compassion or your brain or the thousands of other little things that make up a person. My parents made good money, too, Shouta confesses, and I went to a private junior high. It wasn't that much better. It was probably worse because of a lot of the kids that had knowledge that, in addition to their quirks, they could probably buy their way out of trouble. Money, after all, was the only thing that Shouta ever saw to surpass the worth of a quirk. He lifts up his shirt so his student can see the gash. Shota's heart breaks a little bit, seeing how the kid easily assesses the injury and gets to work. It's not too deep, Sensei. I think you're going to live. Midoriya gives him a wan smile before continuing. It's better at UA. I mean, I heard about their policies toward anti-bullying for years, and they were the first school to make it clear that a quirkless person could apply to any of their courses, but they're saying that a place is inclusive, and it actually being inclusive. UA is refreshing. It should be the norm. Yeah, it should. He agrees as he disinfects the gash and hums thoughtfully. I don't think you need stitches, but it'd be a good idea to see Recover Girl in the morning. He carefully closes the cut with some butterfly bandages before taking gauze and taping it down. How often did you have to do this, kid? Midoriya sits back on his heels. It's clear that he's internally debating just how much he can downplay the situation for him. Shouta raises an eyebrow because the kid is already in deep with the sharing. He seems to realize this as well because Midoriya sighs. Regularly since I was like 7. I've been keeping up with it recently. Recovery Girl says she won't heal my injuries anymore since the sports festival. Oh, hell no. She what? Shouta growls out. The youthful heroine never ends up on his ever-evolving and shifting shit list, but she just rocketed up to the top 5 of all the irresponsible things to do with a student. It's not her fault, Midoriya defends, looking surprised by his vehemence. I kept breaking my arms. She didn't want to make me become dependent on healing quirks to get out of it. Distantly, Shouta knows that's a fair point, but he's a kid with a quirk that's new to his body, and he's still fucking figuring it out. What the fuck, Recovery Girl? Kid, you're 15, he says, resting his hands on those shoulders. They hold so much, but feel so small under his hands. You're still new to learning how to control your quirk. You're allowed to mess up and make mistakes and get hurt. It happens with powerful quirks, even when students had them for 10 years. You had it less than that, and you're still doing better all the time with it. As your teachers, we have to help you. I'm going to talk with Recovery Girl tomorrow. Midoriya looks up at him before nodding. Okay. Shouta nods, dropping his hands. All right, then. The kid looks down. There's some tears gathering in his eyes, but he seems to ignore them. Shouta does him the courtesy of ignoring them as well. I need to do your face, Sensei. Do you mind if I pin your hair back? He nods, sensing that part of the conversation is over. Midoriya clips back his hair with a barrette. A washcloth is produced from somewhere along with warm water, and Midoriya cleans away the blood gently. Facial cuts are the worst, Midoriya mutters as he works. They used to avoid my face because of how much it would bleed. One of the kids, he has this quirk that would make his fingers and his nails super long at will, and he would just scratch me during class. I had a kid who could control paper. Shouta stares, eyes shut, because of the warmth of the water. It feels very nice. He liked to give me paper cuts, nothing I could prove. Same. He was Kachan's friend, and that got him cash with the teachers. Shouta opens his eyes at that. He doesn't think he's going to get a more opportune moment than now to ask about Bakugo. Problem child, he says, hoping that the darkness of the night and the relative intimacy of the situation of his student bandaging his wounds will coax secrets out better than the daylight. I have a question, and I hope that you can trust me enough to be honest. Midoriya looks at the ground, and he feels the kid's hands tremble slightly against his temple. I trust you, Sensei. The kid answers after a long moment. There's something in his tone like shock, like he can't believe that he actually trusts Shouta. No, not Shouta. He can't believe that he trusts a teacher. Did Bakugo bully you? Midori bites his lip for a second. An internal conflict plays across his face. Shouta can only guess at an admittedly complicated history, and it's going to be a minefield to navigate within the coming months. He can feel it. But Midori glances at the news where Endeavor is on the screen, and something in him steals. Why did seeing Endeavor give Midori that resolve? Yes, Midori says as he uses the butterfly bandages on Shota's cut. He did. He was always so brash, you know. A leader, someone everyone wanted to follow, and then his quirk came in. It was so powerful, so cool, well, it was a lot of things, and people just kept telling him that he would be a hero. And then there was me. We were friends once. He sat down next to Shouta, and he grabs the All Might mug. The hot chocolate is probably more like tepid chocolate milk by this point, but Midori doesn't care. I don't know why I piss him off so much. I don't know what it is about me that makes Kachan go all crazy or whatever. But I know I was failed by the system, but Kachan was too. No one told him no. Or that he was wrong. Or that what he was doing wasn't okay. And that's how you get bad heroes in the world who think that just because they're powerful that they're owed something. But I want Kachan to leave me alone and let me be a hero. I want him to be the best hero that he can be as well. That's pretty altruistic, kid, Shouta says into the quiet of the apartment. Midori looks up from under his fringe. Not really, because I've seen how villainous Kachan can be, and I'd rather him be on the side of the heroes than not. Thought of him just turning like that if he loses his shot at his dream, it terrifies me, Sensei. It's a big part of the reason why I kept my mouth shut, because desperate people can do really stupid things. He pauses. And I want to be a hero who saves everyone. Maybe I can't save Kachan, but he deserves the chance to be saved by someone from his own worst impulses. He deserves the chance to be better. Everyone deserves a chance to be better, because how can I call myself a hero if I don't offer him that chance, Sensei? Well, fuck. There's nothing else that Shouta can really say about it, is there? All right, everyone. This concludes Chapter 8 of the Mystery of Midoriya Izuku. Chapter 9 will be next. I hope you all are still enjoying this one. And as always, thank you so much for listening.